We don't think NUS1 has given us any real reason to ban corporations from tying up with academic research. Two things. First, should corporations have a say in social discourse? Second, is there a need to tie up for the preservation of academic integrity? The first thing, should corporations have a say in social discourse? This side of the house is not against corporations doing their own research, right? Which basically implicitly concedes that they have a right to a say and a right to contribute and influence that social discourse. Their main problem was that it was tying up with the academia. We don't think, Mr. Speaker, that if you implicitly concede that there might be a value to what corporations had to say in order to be able to influence that social discourse, you actually have a leg to stand on in this debate. They seem to think that because we agreed that corporations were self-interested, it meant that we think all corporations should do nothing and they were evil straight away. Like, we think and argue that sometimes it's against the social good, sometimes it isn't against the social good. We talked to you about cases of medical breakthroughs or research in the alternative energy field. Those are instances wherein it is perfectly in line with what benefits society more to allow corporate research. We also were perfectly willing to concede, however, that sometimes it isn't. And in those cases, Mr. Speaker, what happens basically, the first thing that we told you was that they're not just barring the bad things from coming out, they're also preventing good things from happening as well. And that's not something, or that's not a trade-off they even wanted to acknowledge in this debate. We think that's really skirting what basically they wanted to say. We also never said that biases were a bad thing per se, right? Like what we told you was that peer review, retesting results, or the academe and its integrity in itself, and the marketplace of ideas was a perfectly legitimate and perfectly good way to be able to resolve these biases. What we told you, Mr. Speaker, was that corporations have more of an incentive and more ability to be able to spew the facts. That at the very least, even if, let's say, there are strong interest groups within society, corporations are also a voice that could allow for other things. In fact, Mr. Speaker, if they said that rich people can still fund, they're basically still erring on the side of somebody who is already well off in society promoting his own advocacy. So by that logic, if I were the CEO of a company, I could totally fund some research. I'm an individual anyway, and I'm doing that, right? Like, we think that there is no principled justification for this side of the house's stance. Let's talk about the need to tie up. Because basically what we told you was that there was a lack of funding, and more to the point, there was a will or a lack of a political and social will to be able to fund these things. There was no real response to this, except to say that it's not just the state who will fund it, right? Like, they seem to think that the rest of society, who had a lot of money and a pot of gold, to be able to give to all random academics. We don't think that's the case. The assertion, Mr. Speaker, from Third Affirmative that corporations are more risk-averse than universities is absurd. Because these corporations, as we told you, had more reason to do this because they're also capable of benefiting more. They're also capable of risking more. Basically what they said was that, well, the academe is not about money, and apparently in the land of the mural of butterflies and rainbows, it automatically means that corporations therefore, that the academe therefore is perfectly fine and perfectly capable of conducting all of the research that society needs. We don't think, Mr. Speaker, that that's something that they've ever been able to capably establish. A lot of research does go, Mr. Speaker, into things that aren't socially beneficial as well. There is a lot of research, for instance, on demographics and things like that the academe does tend to focus on, whereas scientific research or all of this research that corporations tend to do indeed have social, tangible impacts for the most part because they are profit-oriented, because they do know where the money needs to go, because they are capable of taking those risks. For these reasons and more, Mr. Speaker, we think that Ateneo 1 should go back to the Senate.